sovereignty is a contradiction too. Because it would be like saying that the people is over the people over itself. When we get to the point of popular sovereignty, probably what we had to do, this might be, some people might say, well, but this is only a semantic question, a question of words, a conceptual question. I don't think so. What we had to do probably is discard the concept of sovereignty altogether. And then what we have, and I think that this is the practice going on at the Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street movements, right? We don't know how it will proceed, but so far the practice of and the attempt at reinventing democracy, inventing society without the concept of sovereignty, without the concept of a leader above everybody else. Interestingly, the Occupy Wall Street movement began with the idea that there is no leader whatsoever. And then, a more interesting, more complex, but certainly more interesting idea was also, raised that it's not actually that there is no leadership whatsoever, but that everybody is a leader. But that's fine. It's different from saying that, for example, everybody is sovereign. Because in the concept of sovereignty, we have a separation. Sovereignty itself has, of course, the roots of the word sovra, above, right? That's in many words, we have this part of the word means, super, above, and so on and so forth, which is problematic, right? Because, again, the idea is that instead, no one has to be above anyone else, right? But that there is a way in which everybody can participate in the same way, right? So, yeah, you're right. Even popular sovereignty, I think there is in need of, let me put it this way, in need of being questioned. It's not that popular sovereignty is the utmost, that we can get to. No, a popular sovereignty might be better than classic traditional sovereignty, but then why sovereignty? Let me say, even Immanuel Kant, right, when in his ethical writing speaks of the kingdom of ends, right? At one point he speaks of this situation that he calls the kingdom of ends, right? Where he says that everybody is sovereign. In the sense, everybody is a legislator, right? But again, if everybody is sovereign in the real sense of what sovereignty means, then no one needs to be sovereign. In other words, if everybody is a king, there is no point being a king anymore. Everybody is what he or she is. And I call that in my book the dignity of individuation, which is a way of rethinking, something outside of the categories of the category of sovereignty that I believe is, useless and even harmful. Yeah, I do believe that. I understand the point of, in traditional theory, we say, internal, that's what you were speaking about, internal sovereignty on the one hand, external sovereignty on the other, and so on and so forth. Everything seems to work this way, but as we know, things do not work this way, because neither is internal sovereignty always respected, because people are repressed within the territories in which they live, nor is external sovereignty a guarantee of anything. Again, I like to mention again the question of Libya and Gaddafi just recently. Yes.
Does it make sense to talk about sovereignty in the singular? If we're really going to deconstruct sovereignty, in a world that's hegemonic, where sovereignty isn't tied to a specific geographic place, where it's specifically, it's very concentrated but at the same time fragmented, how are we to really identify that concept? Should we use not a form of singularity, but a form of a diverse sovereignty?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The first thing that I would say is that at one point in the presentation that I just made, the lecture, I use sovereignty in the plural. I say sovereignty is the history of modernity. I say the history of sovereignties. I do say that, and I completely agree with you. I mean, sovereignty is very often presented precisely because of this kind of, widely accepted axiom in political theory, philosophy, international relations as, the division between internal and external sovereignty as something in the singular, the sovereignty of the nation states, right? But we know that this is highly problematic. Also because, again, my view of sovereignty engages situations that go beyond those of the nation state, the nation state, but had to do, with all levels of, life, everyday life. I mean, we can find that in the family, the workplace, in interpersonal relations, in all situations. And of course, I completely agree. It is sovereignties that we should be speaking about. Yes. Yes.
I was thinking about a way. Oh, sorry.
Yes. No. Okay, that's fine. Then I will. Yes.
Okay. I was thinking about a way of representing the concept, right? In terms of a radical democracy, right? Where the emphasis on sovereignty is not about abuse, but about humanization and about liberation. And if popular sovereignty is a contradiction in terms of you, then what do we do about domination of the proletariat? Right? How does that?
Of the proletariat.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I was wondering, where do you place something like gender in that context?
Yeah, I mean, what I might say, to this is that first of all, certainly the question of the proletariat. I mean, because again, thinking about these things must also engage us in a kind of, a project that is not necessarily immediate. I mean, something that may happen, let's say in the long run, or in any case, something that ideally could, should be the case, right? So, and I like to go back to Marx in this sense. I mean, the proletariat itself must disappear as a class with the end of oppression and exploitation and so on, right? With the disappearance of all classes, including the proletariat as a class in the classless society, again, there is no need of sovereignty or the justification of the use of the concept of sovereignty, right? And in relation to gender too, I mean, of course, the question of gender is still very difficult, very problematic. There is oppression, right, at that level too, but this is something also that should be overcome probably by overcoming the very idea of sovereignty. I mean, of the idea that someone can have domination over another person, right? Because that is what happens, whether it's in the workplace, in the family, in interpersonal relations, in society as a whole, the idea of but I don't see how, personally, I don't see how sovereignty can be saved and be used in a positive way to, enhance these situations. I don't know if I answered the question, but I think that there is much more flexibility if the concept of sovereignty is really taken away from the picture, and then there is the idea, the reality that there is, life. That every expression of life, every and any life form has equal dignity, right? And so the fact that in whatever the case might be, how this happens, the fact that one form of life takes a position of superiority over another, which is what sovereignty really is, that is always problematic. That is something that should completely go if we can think of a better world, a better society in which there is no oppression, there is no violence, there is no exploitation. Is this possible? I believe it is. I mean, certainly theoretically it is. The question is practically, whether it is, but as Aristotle says, what's possible in theory is possible in practice. So again, I would, I would say that without sovereignty, it is much easier to think differently and therefore to start also living in a different way. Yes, and your point?
You may have just actually answered part of this question, but you talked about during your lecture the concept of sovereignty cannot exist, it coexists with the idea of separation. And in response to one of the previous questions, you also talked about the idea that eliminating the idea of sovereignty altogether, so that you have, rather than even popular sovereignty, you just have the individual as individuals as the power structure itself. In order to get to that, though, would it logically follow that you must bring everybody under the current concept of sovereignty must be brought to the same level of stature of living, however you want to phrase it, happiness, whatever? Everybody must be brought to more or less within the same range on the scale of whatever you want to call it, in order for the entire underlying structure supporting sovereignty to be altered? Or can you eliminate the idea of sovereignty as it currently stands and still correct the inequities that exist in the world today?
Right. I mean, of course, inequities. One of the way you end is very important. That word inequalities, even, right? We can say, let's begin with that. I mean, inequalities perhaps, cannot be eliminated to begin with, right? I mean, inequalities are there to begin with. I like to call attention again to the important book by Eva Peder-Kittay, Love's Labor, Essays on Women, Equality and Dependency, I believe, where she says it would be wrong to begin with the idea that we have equality. We have inequalities. And because she also deals with the question of disability, this question, becomes very important here, because at the level, when we have whatever is called disability, which is in itself a problematic concept, right? But the fact that some people may have physical, mental, or physical and mental impairments, right? Which are then constructed as disability, right? Of course, this creates a situation which is uneven among people, right? So, but does that situation necessarily have to call for the concept of sovereignty? That's the question of care. Let's say that I take care of someone who can't, people who can't take care of themselves, right? Of course, I will have power over this person, right? A person who's ill because of an accident or because of a disability, because of very young age, as Eva Peder-Kittay says, or because of very old age, right? I will, as the carer, have power over this person. But can this power be, and should this power be constructed as a sovereign power? Of course not. Because power is two things, at least. The power to do things, right? And the power over things or over people, right? So the power over, let's put it this way, should be rejected. Who wants to have power over other people? I believe that by and large, no one. There are situations there, but then, they need special treatments, philosophically speaking, right? They should be considered in a special way. But otherwise, it's not a nice thing to be in a position of having power over someone. But the power that I have to create a situation for the person who cannot take care of himself or herself, right? That is not sovereign power, that is not domination, right? It is still power, but used differently, right? I don't know if that does not change the situation and the relationship, the uneven relationship of inequality to begin with. What I can do, if I am successful, I say I, but then society, right? Create the structures, the institution, the structures, the different institutions, as much as possible, so that those who have special conditions that then are called disabilities may have access to the same things that other people have access to, right? If this is done, again, what individuals use and society uses is power, but it's not power as domination. It's power as the capacity to create, new situations. It's power to do and not power over. I don't know if I address the question, but I think that this is really the distinction that we have to look at, and the distinction whereby we can understand the sovereignty again as power as domination, as power from above, and that's what sovereignty means. Yeah, we can keep the concept of sovereignty, but then why? If that's what it means, right? I mean, as Confucius was saying in ancient China, we had to rectify words. If words are used that no longer relate to their original meaning, why use them? I mean, it creates confusion, and maybe it's not simply a linguistic, semantic confusion. It is a confusion, I believe, that is in the interests of a particular, ideological way of looking at things, a particular power. I mean, it's not an innocent mistake, but it is a mistake which is then used politically, ideologically, and so on. So it is better to get rid of this and understand that that's what power also can be. The power to do, the power to improve, the power, and that's freedom, right? The freedom, again, to do good things, to do bad things, right? And eliminate, at least starting from the theoretical point of view, and then also put that into practice, eliminate power as power over, power as domination, power as a sovereign power. Yes?
In creating the structures that you speak of to eliminate sovereignty, what comes to mind for me is the inequalities of education, especially at basic education. How do we go about creating institutions that eliminate sovereignty, but yet avoid a sort of, maybe fascism is a little bit too strong of a word, but at some level, have to equalize things. But how do you avoid the uniformity of a top-down type of structure with education?
Oh yeah,
give everyone the same.
absolutely, because that applies to education as well. I mean, that type of education is not education in the real sense, as it should be critical, education that engages and is based on, critical thinking, on the fact that people can actually start questioning things, and therefore the people can get to whatever idea they get to by a whole process, right? That they engage in, right? I mean, again, but I think that I understand. I mean, the classic idea of education is simply something which is passed from one person to the other, right? I mean, a top-down situation is again part of the general paradigm of sovereignty, right? And it must go. But I think that in that case, it's not difficult to change. I mean, because again, there is another idea of education, which is, by the way, also part of the meaning of leading, right? Leading the way. I mean, showing the way. I mean, a leader, an educator, in that sense, is someone who, let me put it this way, someone who has already done something, who has already taken this journey and shows the way, but without determining, the results, without it, right? I mean, so in education, there must be this critical element. I mean, critical thinking, questioning, and that avoids the danger of sovereignty altogether. But maybe you're not.
I think you're interested in part. I'm not sure if there's a way. How do we structure education in a way that at some level isn't controlling? Is it more, are you saying then it's the process, it's teaching the process of communication rather than teaching, I guess the basic, other elements of, I'm thinking of, basic education that like kids get it as children, that you learn teaching the truths of life, I
but
guess.
you don't teach, yeah, I see. I mean, I understand, but you of course you don't teach the truth of life.
I know, but like
No. But I see the point. But no, that's an important question. Of course, there are some things that can be said to be true, right? And other things that are true only according to a particular set of beliefs. So I mean, I don't know. What I teach is usually philosophy. I usually always. And I spend usually a lot of time speaking about this, the difference between, knowledge and belief, and all these things, because of course people can believe anything. So if I teach something, for example, like creation, if I tell, children, especially in your example, starting with children, that creation is right, that the idea of creation is true, of course I am lying to them. Because it cannot be true. It may be a belief, a respectable belief, but it is simply not true. So, for example, the question between creation and evolution, right? I mean, some people say, well, everybody has their opinions about this. Wrong. Because evolution is not a matter of opinion. Evolution is not a theory, it's a fact. Not believing in evolution is not allowed. I mean, if one wants to be intellectually honest, right? No, really, I mean, if one is intellectually honest, it's not an option, believing or not believing in evolution, whereas believing or not believing in creation, yes, they are two different things. So this this is just an example, right? So when people teach that model and say that yes, there is creation, this is the absolute truth, of course, they are manipulating people's minds. They are, engaging in this type of, let's call it now, sovereign education, right? Which is wrong, ethically, but also logically, right? Whereas there are other ways in which, one can show the problematic nature of the truth. Also because, again, science, philosophy, they never say this is the truth, the ultimate truth. At most they say this is the closest we can get to the truth, right? This is, as far as we know, the best approximation to the truth. So in that already you find, questioning, doubting, critical thinking. I don't know if that goes.
no, that is very,
okay.
very helpful.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to thank you for coming out this evening, and we'd like to also extend our appreciation to Professor Bruno Gulli for giving us a very stimulating and informative talk.